get started here. Keisha, do you mind if I just take a few minutes and introduce the group and introduce you? Okay. And I'm sure more people are going to be coming in, but we'll just go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Glakos. I think I've met you all now or knew you before, so thank you for coming. This is the Austin Women's Investing Group. We have some folks here in person. We have a bunch of folks here on the Zoom call. So this is our November meeting with Keisha Bickham, which is so exciting. She and I reconnected after 10 years, earlier this year or last year. And when she shared her story with me, I was like, oh my gosh, that is the dream of most of the women in the Austin Women's Investing Group. You must come and share your story, because we talk about this concept of financial freedom, financial independence, charting your own path, being in control of your own destiny all the time. So I'm so excited that she's here. The Austin Women's Investing Group was started in 2011, and we get together once a month in person and virtually to get a bunch of women together to talk about money and investing in finance. So we've done it pretty much every month since 2011. So that's a bunch of meetings. We try to cover a range of topics from beginner to advanced, but really, it does kind of come back to the topic we're talking about today, right? Which is, how can I know more? How can I learn more so that I feel confident making these, very important decisions in my day-to-day life? One of the things before we start, nothing in this group is intended to be individualized investing advice. I am a financial advisor during the day. I probably won't be chatting too much today, but we're here in the room and virtually to learn from the women sitting next to us or across from us. That's the whole point of the group. That's how we started in people's living rooms. So the idea is it's a conversation, lots of asking questions, right? Always ask the question. Don't preface it with, maybe this is a dumb question. It's not, right? All questions are really important to ask, because there's almost a guarantee that someone else in the room or someone else on the chat is going to have the same question. Or they're just going to really like your question. So strongly encourage everyone to ask questions. As we maybe here just in the room, we'll just go around really quickly and have everyone introduce themselves. There's a lot of really cool connections that over the years have been made in the Austin Women's Investing Group. So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves in person. And then if those of you in the Zoom room can introduce yourselves to each other as well, that would be amazing. Just really quick, just your name, what you do during the day, how you found the group, and what you're hoping to learn today. And kind of if we start here with me and Gwen, and then we'll kind of go around the room and end with Keisha and let her launch into it. Does that work? Do you want me to go first? Or you want to go first? You can go first. Well, so I'll just model it since I already introduced myself. But I'm Sarah. During the day, I'm a financial advisor with Blackburn Financial. I found the group when I started it with my friend Michelle in 2011. And I am just really looking forward to everything that Keisha's bringing to the table today. So that's what I'm hoping to learn more about.
My name is Gwen. During the day, I work with Sarah and Casey, the advisors at Blackburn Financial, as their assistant. I'm also one of the co-organizers of AWIG. Today, I'm really interested in learning about the seasons on the journey of financial freedom. So seasons, there are seasons of growth and seasons of lack, and
don't take the presentation.
Oh, sorry. It's not necessarily always a very linear path. So interested to hear what you have to share.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
Hi, I'm Aisha. During the day, I am a financial wellness educator at Austin Community College, as well as an accredited financial counselor. And I'm here to hear a little bit more about Keisha's backstory, so I can take that backstory and share it with my students at ACC.
That's such a good idea. Awesome. Welcome.
That's great. I'm Teresa, and I found the group on Meetup quite a few years ago. And I'm not working right now. I took Social Security early, so I've been kind of not working for the last few years, but I'm kind of in that transition phase where I'm learning how to, not really growing my investments so much as I'm trying to figure out how to use them now. So anything that in that area is real helpful, because it's much harder, much harder to think through that or to figure out how to do that, and when you're just growing your money. So when you're starting to use it, it's a whole different ball game. So.
Welcome back.
Ginger. Hello, I'm Ginger. Well, Sarah is taking care of my money.
Thank you. I did not make her come. Okay.
I had to stay home and watch UT win at the very end, so I'm a little bit late, but I'm glad we can, I'm not that late.
They win?
UT won.
Oh, wow, thank you. My husband can be, I can text him now.
So, let's see, I guess I'm starting my next half of life, work. So legacy is a big part because I'm moving into end of life care and specifically, as a, end of life doula. So in working with clients, this is different, obviously, but there's this legacy component about, really looking at what is this, my life, and then how do I want to, release, my legacy to others. And so as far as my work, I'm super interested. And then just as far as for me, this sounds right up my alley and exciting. Thank you.
Do Sarah and Leora, you guys want to go, and then we'll scoot you back up towards the front?
Just quick introduction, what you do during the day, and then.
Or just your name.
Yeah. You're feeling quiet, that's all right too.
I'm Sarah. I work at a mortgage company, terrible pay.
Put it out there. Did you hear that
Yeah.
on the Zoom call? Sarah's looking for a new job in sales.
Okay. Thank you. I've never thought about my legacy, but I'm here.
Okay. Awesome, welcome back.
My name is WilliRoc Pearson. I'm a software engineer here in Austin, and I'm going into personal finance and financial wellness and stuff, and trying to share it and back to you when I can. So yeah, I'm just curious.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Lori Watts, and I'm one of the co-organizers. And I originally found it on Meetup, and I was a software developer. I just haven't been working for a couple of years, and just sort of focusing on different things. I'm also interested in the legacy component. How do you live your legacy? So I'm intrigued by that. So I'm looking forward to the talk.
You guys can do that. Who wants to go first?
I'm Jen. I am a director of finance for a custom home builder here in Austin, and a CPA candidate. It's been a long journey, but glad I did it. And I'm here just to learn more about financial freedom and how it happens. So I'm really interested in the journey.
Amazing, welcome.
I'm Susan Geist. My husband and I early retired at the beginning of the year. So we hit financial freedom. And like Teresa, we're kind of in that transition period now where we've been accumulating for years and years, and now we're starting to have to draw down those savings, but I mean, we can easily live another 50 years. And so it's been a real challenge to try to figure that out. But I also, on the side, I have this business, Rising Fem Wealth, and I help women on their financial freedom journey and with tax optimization and things like that.
Good, welcome back.
I'm Shannon. I work in mental health during the day. I found this group. I took a class at UT with Sarah, and then I got involved in this group several years back now. I think what caught my attention was I will be turning 45 in 2024, although I know 120% I will not be retiring today. But I'm curious to find out how you did that, kind of like your journey.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect setup. So I'm excited to be here. I'm Keisha Bickham. I excited to be here. I used to live in Austin. Gosh, probably been 6 years ago. Well, yeah, 6, 8, I don't know. But I've an engineer by trade, and I'm excited to talk to y'all. So you all have set the bar very high. I will say that just a safe zone for those of y'all who are in here, those of y'all in the chat. So as Sarah mentioned, if there are questions or things that come up, please have them come up. I'll tell you, The slides are really just the guidance in case I get too off track, or if you all get bored and I feel like I need to put some pictures up. So the slides are really just the guideline. I'm really just here to be present with you all. I know it's a challenge with those online, but feel free to put your comments in chat. I know Gwen's gonna do a great job in getting you engaged as well. And so just wanted to acknowledge that this is a safe zone. Also, I'm gonna say there is not a magic wand. If you came in here and said, Keisha's gonna specifically tell me the 6 things I need to do to retire early, that's not what this is about. So you can go ahead and leave now, I won't get offended, but I'm here really just to share my story. As Sarah mentioned, not a financial advisor, don't claim to be, sue your cousin Ed, not me. I just want to be real clear on that. But this is why I'm here. So I want to have an honest conversation about money, acknowledge that everyone is on their own personal journey. I had to learn this myself and still am. Share my story, give insight, encourage action, because we can sit here and observe and learn all day and try to get it right and try to have a perfect plan. But the reality is it just takes one action to get started, to be a resource and build relationships. So that's why I'm here, and giving you the power and insurance to have live the life that you want. So this is about me. It's my family, it's my granny, she's special in my heart. You see my brand, I got this jacket on, that's what I do. But about me is I want to be someone, everyone I'm blessed to encounter, to help them move further and faster than I did. I have been a mentor since before I knew what a mentor was. I've had a mentor since before I knew what a mentor was. And I had the blessing actually about a month ago to meet with her, it's my second grade teacher. And we had lunch. And it was just the most beautiful thing. And she said, Keisha, this doesn't surprise me. You know, you've always been like this. I'm like, what? I said I was 7. She's like, yeah, and you've always been this way. And so I take that as a challenge for me to be able to do the same thing. If you look about, we talk about our day job. Here are all the day job places that I've worked. And I don't know why the theme is blue, but it is, interestingly. And now my day job is working with WilliRoc Ventures. And I'll tell y'all this, one of the things is I retired at 45, and I am discovering what retirement is and what it means. And so the theme of today is really going through seasons. So I'm going to share my seasons, lessons learned. I may get emotional in some because it's triggering, but I will share the season that I have. And this is a summary of them. So my first season was do what you're supposed to do. Go to school, work hard, get good grades, get a good job. And that's sort of the instructions. I had to build the blueprint from there. And then, so that was till 24 after I got the first job. And then I'm a real adult. So I have some kids, some other things going on. Then I had my first OS action, as one of my friends call it. And I cuss a little. So if y'all get offended, I'm sorry. I won't drop the F-bomb, but I cuss a little. So my next season was, this shit ain't gonna ever happen to me again. And we'll talk about that when that season was. And that was a really pivotal part from a financial standpoint. Then I went into the striving and sacrifice season, and now I'm in the trust me season. And so I'm going to go through these seasons of what it meant for me. Ask questions as they come up. This is my supposed, that's me get my honor society cord in 11th grade. I'm so proud. My son just got here, so I had to find an old picture and pull it up. But these were the things we were told to do. Get the good grades, act like you got some sense, don't embarrass me, get the good job, get married, have a kid, get some dogs, have a plant. Retire, pay your bills, all these things, but no one really told you like this is real stuff forever. If I could have stayed 21, the legal thing makes a difference. I could have stayed 21 for a long time, would have wanted to, but this is my season. I went to NC State and got a degree in electrical engineering. I knew within my second year, I was not going to be an electrical engineer, but it had a full scholarship. And so I kept going. And I knew in my head I was going to be an industrial engineer, but everybody picked on the industrial engineers. You know what I'm talking about, the imaginary engineers. So I stuck out my electrical engineering degree. I would say I'm a first generation college graduate, and I went to school debt free. And I used to think, oh, I was so smart and I had the scholarships, but what happened was I went to a 98% predominantly Black high school, and probably 70% of us, if not 80%, were first generation. And we had this spirit of helping each other. That was just a part of the theme of what we did. I hung around smart kids. I hung around the nerds. We were the nerds. And I was the one that had the 3-ring notebook because the internet was not yet invented. And I had the scholarships and I had a 3-ring notebook. And folks would come up to me like, Keisha, I majored in biology. okay, I'm not, so you can have that one. So I always had this desire to want to share and help people and uplift and give possibility. So I applied for probably 60 scholarships. Me and the typewriter were going, I bought a typewriter and I would bring it to school every day. And I put it in the lounge or in the office of my guidance counselor, who I also had lunch with a month ago. And so I went to NC State with extra money and I didn't know what to do with it. I knew not to spend it, but I didn't know what else. And so I had $13,000 and I just knew, don't spend it. And so I put it in a CD and I'm like, okay, this math doesn't make sense. I know enough about that. And I started learning about it. So this was my money story. So the first thing I did, I read the books and they were like, buy what you know. And so I knew Johnson & Johnson baby powder wasn't going anywhere. I didn't know they sold hips and knees, but they do. I knew Coca-Cola wasn't going anywhere. And so I started buying through a drip. So I spent $90 a month, which was equivalent $3 a day. At that time, I could get a Chick-fil-A meal for $3. I can't now. And it created the habit. So now looking back 20 some years later, that's where it started in my season of do what I was supposed to do, was creating that habit of investing. It demystified it. I wasn't scared of it. I remember the first year I went and did taxes and I went to H&R Block because I had to go to professionals and I'm talking them how to do it. And I'm like, I'll never pay for this again. So the next year I did it myself because it's not that complicated. I gained perspective. So when stocks went down, it's like a Nordstrom sale. So instead of going to get the clearance items, I bought stock when it was on sale. And then expanded portfolio, and I graduated with a 5-figure net worth. It wasn't a lot, it was like 20 grand, but that's where I came from. I also did an internship at Procter & Gamble. And in that internship, I did 2 internships. And the second internship, we're going through the form and it has employee stock purchase, 10% off. They were like, yes, I said, I want to do that. They were like, well, you're an intern. I said, I am an employee. Yes, give me the form. And so I was living at home during the summers when I worked at Procter & Gamble. And I put like 80% of my money in the stocks. I didn't need it. I have scholarship money. I was living at home. So that got me started. And I would have never thought about that had I not taken this first step. So that's my story in when I'm supposed to do season. And then I went to the real adult, a hell's fight. And why they taking all my money? So I graduated with a engineering degree, had a good check coming in relatively, got married, first house, had kids, and they probably went in a little bit different order, but that's what happened. This is actually our first house. We didn't go with the starter house. We went all in. So that's our first house. These are my babies. They're not babies anymore. But I'm a real adult season. So had the job, took real estate as an asset, recognized and got into the 401k contribution. I can't talk about wealth without talking about relationships. So I got married and we had our debt. I ain't never had that, but we had our debt and we had to talk through the dynamics of that and what that meant. And ours still was his, but we weren't doing it together. And life insurance, and then there was an income shift. So I was in oil and gas, and I'm like, I'm really tired of being around these dirty places and all these dudes. And I had friends that went into healthcare, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, but I know I'm supposed to do something different. So I took a leap and I took a quality job in healthcare. I took a $20,000 pay cut. And I was like, because I don't do parentheses, but that one was a parentheses. But I had my money system in place. And by the time I'm getting out of this real adult season, we have a 6-figure net worth. This was just time and patience. It wasn't any windfall. It wasn't any of that. This is what happened in that season. And I'll talk a little bit more about this shift because it was probably one of the 2 best decisions I've made. But now, it shouldn't happen again. So I'm in healthcare. I'm clear on my skill set. I'm an engineer that can fix problems. And we know anybody that's had any interaction with healthcare, they have plenty of problems to fix. So I went in, they were like, well, you haven't done healthcare for a while. You're not a nurse. It's going to take you a while. I automated my job in 3 months. And I said, what else? And they were like, oh, you think differently. Yeah, touch that. And so I created the job description and they were like, we need more Keishas. You'll never get another Keisha. Go ahead. I didn't have honestly idea, but I did. So in healthcare, you gotta have all what I call the comma dots. So you get the check marks, you get the certificates, you get the masters. So I did that. Then I almost got fired because this mouth you hear here, it's always been this mouth. The 2nd grade teacher told me that too. And I got in a situation where I went from being a hero to the enemy, and I didn't understand it. But I was like, dang, that don't feel right. But I just had my son at the time, I think was 4 months old. I was in my last semester of my master's degree when this incident happened with my boss, and I said, hey, this conversation ain't going well. So I got this breast pump over here. I got a class tonight, and I'm gonna walk out this office because this is not going anywhere positive. And I almost got fired for insubordination because I left the office. And I had to sit in it. I couldn't get another job. And they were like, well, you're on a written notice, so you can't do the transfer and this and that. And I had to sit in that messy. And one of the things I learned sitting in that messy is this shit ain't ever happen again. I'm not gonna ever be in a job that I have to stay in because I gotta pay daycare and mortgage. And so I sat in that messy. And then one Sunday I'm on email and they said, how would you like to work in the second biggest city in Texas? I'm like, what's the second biggest Texas? Oh, San Antonio. And then a couple clicks later, I get to this job and I'm like, apply. This is probably 6 months after this, and I got myself together. I learned how to shut up a little bit in the environment that I was in, and I filtered and said, okay, I'm gonna get through it. Had a change in management, so it actually became a very, became a very healthy situation I was in at work. But I clicked the button, and that button was with St. David's Healthcare. And a week later, I was here interviewing, and after I clicked that button, they called me like that Tuesday. And I'm like, I better tell my husband that I applied for this job because we were given in North Carolina. So I clicked the button. Literally 3 weeks later, we're moving into Cedar Park, an apartment we never seen with 2 little kids. And so that was a shift for me coming into healthcare. So never gonna be in this situation again. We got real about expenses. I did a pause on my 401k so that we can get that cushion, because if I need to walk out this door, I want to comfortably be able to walk out the store. Keeping the car to the wheels off. That's not exactly my car, but it's probably only 2 years older than the one I had then. I hit a 6-figure income while I was here in Austin. I had money strategy and efficiency. Can I tell y'all something? This is both the cultural and the male thing, so I'm gonna say this. So when I got the promotion to get to the 6-figure mark, I had a manager, supervisor, boss, whatever you want to call it, CEO, who said, so now you got this 6-figure, you gonna go buy a car? And I sat there, I'm like, I'm smart enough to, I learned how to keep my mouth shut, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna respond the way I said, actually, I'm a big investor. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna invest. And the same person was another part of a pivotal point in my life where I was told, yeah, this here, you didn't go to Trinity University. That's how we promote here at St. David's. Sorry, I said it. And so this isn't the path for you. And that was a punch in the gut, but it was also my permission slip to say, okay, it's time to shift. And I tell you, that person who was the same person that told me both, I still talk to that person because that gave me the reality of betting on myself. So 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago, I'm in Croatia and I'm crawling up these stairs. And I remembered that this person I worked for used to take steps 3 at a time, and I had to practice those steps so I wouldn't be embarrassed if I ever walked into the same building with that person. And I texted them and said, I'm so glad I used to take these stairs so that now now that I'm in Croatia, these stairs don't mean a whole lot. And we went back and forth. And so I say that to say that even the people that give you the message that hurt doesn't mean they're bad people. It was just the message you needed to hear in that season. And so that was my story. And so the never again season ended and we get to a 7-figure net worth. So then the striving and sacrifice. So I check all the boxes, move 4 times. I learned the power of leverage because I had a job opportunity to go to Vegas, moving from North Carolina to Vegas. And someone said, such and such was told not to mess this up. I mean, what you mean? Like that you don't mess this up for you taking this job. I said, okay, help me understand. Meaning you can ask for whatever you want to take this job. Oh, okay, I can roll with that. And so I threw a big number out there. They said yes the same day. I'm like, the number wasn't big enough, but I learned. So I learned leverage because at this point I built a career set, a skill set, and a network that I could leverage it. So that was my first taste of it. Checked all the boxes, got in a C-suite role. I've always been one who loved to travel, and I traveled to escape at this season in my life. And I got to the C-suite, I got the title, and I got into the boardroom and I felt my life deteriorating on the other end. It wasn't a healthy environment. I was doing all the things. And I remember the thing that stuck in mind, I was taking my daughter to visit colleges because she was a senior. And I got really beat up for doing that. And I'm like, that's some bull crap. That ain't happening, you know? And so I felt this life that you see me there laying down, that ain't me, but if it would, that was what I would look like. And so this is my financial story during the season of striving and sacrifice. Maximized 401k, got the Roth started, was pissed. I didn't know what a Roth was till 6 years after it came out. I got really, really clear on what I wanted, which was freedom, and had a solid money system. I saw on one of the slides, I know y'all had FU money. So I have two categories. There's the go to hell money that you can take a break and walk away. And the FU money is you can burn the whole thing down and burn all the they tell you not to burn. So I got the go to hell money. And so understood the options for building money and went all in. So invested and looked at where the options are, tracked progress and shifted. So at this stage in the striving and sacrifice, I learned, like you were saying, I can take a little bit from this bucket and put it here. And this is how the cash flow happens here. And so it became more than just a putting into the system, but now optimizing. How do I want to move it around? And then we got to the point where I was at that burnout stage and I had the conversation with my husband and we looked at the numbers and we're like, you know, we're okay. Like, we really do have enough. And the other thing that I've learned, and you'll see it in my next season, is that none of this is permanent. I can walk away from this job, this career, this title right now. My skill set's still mine. My title, I mean, my smarts are still mine. My relationships are still mine. No company or organization can take that away. And so that we have enough is more than a spreadsheet. I already had enough in me as well. So then, trust me, Steve. So I walked away. I released myself from having to figure it out. I heard that a lot today. The figuring out is one that a lot of times can hold you back or make you doing this striving thing. I knew the true execution of leverage, and I'll talk about that in a second. Tasted freedom and soaked it in. So for a year, I live in Sarasota, Florida. My husband works from home, and my kids' school is like 6 minutes away from the beach. Every morning we go walk Siesta Key, and that was our app. And so he didn't have any meetings before 10 o'clock. I didn't have my business planning, whatever meetings I was having, and that was something that got us closer together as well. That's a picture of us in Siesta Key right there. And I started traveling for peace versus traveling for escape. And so this is the little kids that definitely waiting to get into. So the little babies you saw before are now grown, and they cost me college tuition, out-of-state tuition, but that's my daughter Lauren. This here was Portugal in January. This here is Colombia, South America in April, and this here is Croatia just a month ago. And I mentioned Jamaica, but I didn't get on there. But the 5 countries I visited this year was my traveling for peace. And I don't say that to brag, I'm not out here spending money just because, but it's these places and these experiences that I always said I wanted to do, that now in the trust me season, I've been able to. So what's the money look like in the trust me season? It's space and trust for abundance and freedom. It's the confidence we'll make it work. Like, again, the skill set and the ability that I have is not going away. Leveraging skill set to network, generate income. And so this is what happens. So when I was first struggling with, and I'm gonna say the word struggle, which I don't like, but I was struggling with whether or not I was gonna call this retirement. I was working with this company. They were trying to recruit me for a position. I went through the process for 7 months, and they went with someone else, which is fine. It was an internal person who'd done it for interim. And I'm like, that's fine. And they were like, well, but you could come do this one, and it's an hour away, but you can do this role to get your foot in the door. And I remembered, like, something just clicked. And I'm like, nah, that ain't what we do. And she was like, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't need to work. And I said, that's not something you're supposed to tell a recruiter, but that is my truth. And so, no, I'm not trying to force something to happen. I'm not taking a job an hour from somewhere that's honestly not even safe and diverse enough for my kids. I'm not getting my foot in the door. No. And she was like, so what are you doing? I said, I'm actually packing for my 20th anniversary to Portugal right now. And I said, and what I'm not doing is wasting any more time with y'all. I said, I would love the opportunity. I really did appreciate the company. I think the culture is great. If there's an opportunity to consult, I would love to. But for now, I'm good. And so that was a very pleasant. The person was like, okay, well, that sounds great. And so I stayed in contact with that person. I'm like, hey, I know you had hip surgery. How you doing? I kept those relationships. That's something I always do. You hear that theme? I kept those relationships. So fast forward back in, what month is this? October. So back in July, maybe, I get a phone call. Hey, there's another position open at the organization. You want it? I said, I told you I'm retired and I'm not putting on real pants and a bra every day. Like, that's not the life I'm doing. She's like, well, but can you at least talk to them? And I remember the CEO, I had a conversation with him. He called me while picking up his kid from the bus stop. I'm like, okay, that tells me you're a real person. And then I had a friend that had a pretty major surgery at that hospital. And he said, tell me when. And he visited my friend during the hospital. I'm like, okay, that tells me you're good people. I will at least talk to you. So we had a conversation, we were vibing really good. And then I was like, no, I can't make it work. And I went to the beach the next day and it hit me. What about an interim? Like, what about this? Because I had said, I said, what about an interim? And so I typed the email while walking on the beach. I sent him a picture because he's like, I love the beach. I never get there. I sent him a picture of the beach. And I said, I know your daughter would love to see these sea turtle tracks that I saw this morning. First time I'd ever seen them. So I sent him that picture and said, here are the benefits that an interim could happen. Let me know what you think. I sent it to the recruiting team. They're like, oh, they don't do that. I said, okay, that's fine. So then fast forward a couple of weeks and talk to a friend and I'm like, I really have this in my spirit that I worked in corporate for 20 years and I need to leverage my skill set. There's got to be a way to be able to do some consulting or something. So she gave me some examples of some ideas and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll follow up with them tomorrow. Literally 2 hours later, I get a phone call from that CEO's assistant. And I'm like, okay, can you talk to Mary tomorrow? No, I'm taking my kids to Orlando tomorrow. But could you talk in the evening? No, I know Mary is intense and I don't have intense phone calls while driving, so no. But can you talk to her Thursday? Sure. And so then I called the recruiter, y'all know why Mary want to talk to me? No, I said, okay. And then the CEO texted me, you got a minute to chat? I'm like, yeah, you want to tell me why your boss want to talk to me? He's like, well, that interim thing, I think we want to do that. I said, okay. So that took me out of my, what I call retirement, to now a point of leverage where I'm now a hospital executive again for 6 months. I'm making my salary in a compressed period of time, and it's a wonderful environment. The people are great. They ask me every day to stay, and I'm like, the suit thing is already getting old. The travel thing is, I miss my beach, but I go home every weekend. And so that was my other point of leverage. So now we had enough, but it doesn't mean our money can't still grow. And so I found another way of defining retirement in a way that I want to do it. And if I want to stay, I can. If I don't, I don't. But again, it's the skill set and everything that I still have, the relationships, that now I'm in a season of just being open to it. And what was beautiful is when I got into that building and got into that boardroom, I just had to open my mouth and I was received. And that again confirmed I already had everything in me. And it's a beautiful thing. So that's the end of the season. I'm gonna give some other examples from a finance standpoint, but I saw your hand was up. So, and I see your eyebrows. So tell me what you're thinking.
So if I know when an interim position is.
So an interim position, if you work in healthcare, you know, because we can't ever get full-time folks, but an interim basically, so here, it's interesting that you asked that. So typically you'll see someone at an executive or corporate level where they have interim, and we trying them out to see if they're good enough. That's typically what the interim title means. We're gonna give them a try to see if they're good enough. And at first I was like, I don't feel right, but I'm like, whatever, I don't care what other people think. And so I'm like, well, this is an interim to see if they're good enough for me. So I flipped it. Yep. And I'm like, and it's a defined period. And so one of the things that I'll talk about that we're now investing in, I had some family property, 40 acres. And culturally, 40 acres and a mule has some significance. So I got 40 acres and I protected it from foreclosure back in 2013 when my grandmother passed. And I had my only goal was to save it. That was it. And then I had a friend say, well, what are you gonna do with that land? I said, I saved it. It's been in my family for 100 years. That's all I want to do is save it. She's like, what you gonna do with it? And it started me thinking, so now I'm gonna develop this land. But it cost $1 million to build a road. And so now I'm leveraging this assignment now because it's like, I want to get $1 million to build this road. And so it's another way of expanding the perspective of investing because now I'm a land developer. No idea what I'm doing, but I got the folks who do know what they're doing on contract to be able to support that. And that's where we're going to build our forever home. And so that's sort of this next part of the season. But that's what an interim is, long answer to your question. And so it's just someone who's temporarily, typically in a leadership position to do it for a set period of time until either they get the role full time or they bring in somebody else full time. So, the path according to Keisha. So as I mentioned, I do wealth coaching. And so if I take all of my seasons and put it in the cliff notes, these are the 6 steps. And the number one that I don't want to be missed here is to get in touch. The first part of that is knowing what your money story is. So remember I told y'all I went to college, I got the scholarships, I got more scholarships after I got there. And I gave myself all this credit of, you got scholarships, you started investing young, oh, you're so smart. And last year, after going through a process of estate distribution, probate, all the stuff that comes with being an adult at another phase of life, I realized that my money story was not, you were this smart person who your daddy told you, your grandfather told you, if you were short a penny in the store, go get your penny. That's part of it. But the other part is I was a product of a single home. And my mom gave me everything I needed and most of what I wanted. But she worked very hard. And because of her money story, whenever I asked for something, it wasn't always a welcoming conversation. And so what I learned is that my money story, and this came up because I was telling a friend about selling candy in middle school. And I'm like, yeah, so I walked home to my grandma's every day after school, and there was a curb market there, and there were kids in school that wanted candy. So I go to the curb market and I buy the Red Hots and the Boston Baked Beans and the Annihilators, and I mark it up 30%, and they would go. And if they wanted a soda, it got marked up like 2x, because that's a risky item to try to put in the backpack. And my friend was like, Kenda, why are you selling candy at school? And I was like, because I wanted to have money in my pocket. And so my money story is, I didn't have to ask if I had my own money. And so that's my money story. And so when I say get in touch, like understand where your money story is coming from for you. Like growing up, relationships, divorces, parent relationships, those kind of things, like really get in touch with what drives your money story, what drives how you think about money as abundance or as money as something that's hard to get or hard to hold on to. Like get in contact and touch with what your money story is and don't judge it. Like let it be, but recognize where it helps or doesn't help you as far as what you want. And that's the other, get clear on what you want. Not what your mom and daddy want, not what your cousins want, but what you really want. And that way your goals are clear and you can work towards it. And then the other part, and I learned this from my business coach who runs a company called Evoke Life, is who do you have to be to get there? I didn't say how. Who do you have to be to get to where you want to get to? And that's some deep stuff that we don't have time for today, but that's a piece that would really resonate with me. Then the next step 2, get your inventory, your assets, you got a stack of paper. We just bought a new shredder, it's getting ready to get broken, because I know. But assets, liabilities, yes, write it all down, don't skip it. Know your net worth, even if it has parentheses. I know nobody in this group has a situation necessarily, but just know it because y'all have been listening to Sarah for 5 years. But protection from an insurance beneficiary, estate planning, long-term care, and then money shifts. Like know what do you need to do differently? Because if what you're doing now for good, y'all probably wouldn't be here. So what do you need to do differently, whether it's expenses, bringing in more income, investing, what are those money shifts in your inventory process? Take action. So it's not all about figuring it out. It's about taking action, how you want your money to work for you differently, the money system in place, those 4 components, write the check, have it do it automatically, and review regularly. And then the last part, fuel. So one of the things I remember, I say pay your old lady. So first, my old lady's name is Pearl. She was it's a kid to Miss Pearl from 227. She like handled everybody on the block. And so my old lady's name is Miss Pearl. And I pay Miss Pearl first. Because I know if I get to 85 and Miss Pearl gotta work at Walmart or be the greeter or whatever, she's gonna be cussing the young Keisha out. And so I don't want that to happen. So I pay old lady Pearl first. Feed the money into your system. This one was key to me. And this came up with that conversation like, you're gonna buy a car, is I never see the extra. So the raise, the bonus. How many of y'all know what a Social Security bonus is? So Social Security bonus, I didn't find out until you gotta get to that income level. So whatever you make, I think this year is 145 or 145.7 or something like that. So if you make more than $147,000 a year, your Social Security stops once you hit that number. I call it the Social Security bonus. I was working with this client who's a high income earner, and it was like in October. And I said, what'd you do with your Social Security bonus? She's like, what are you talking about? I said, look at your pay stub, look at this week's pay stub, and look at February's pay stub. And I said, what does that number say? She said, it's 0. I said, what are you doing with it? She's like, what are you talking about? I thought it was a raise. I said, it goes away in January. If you thought that was a raise. I said, that's $950 a month you could be doing somewhere else. So I always work from, and this wasn't from a restriction standpoint, it was just a strategy. So I never touched the side. So if the bonus, it went to work. If it was a raise, it went to work. And I would have my money from my checking account or from my pay stub go to different places so I wouldn't even be tempted. Like I didn't want to have to think about, oh, I got to do this. It's automatic. Yeah.
That Social Security bonus?
Yeah.
You're saying
It's not a bonus. The government's not giving you nothing.
Oh.
It just says that once you get if you make more, I think this year is 147,000. But once you make more than 147,000, you've reached that 6%, you've reached that limit on Social Security. So the SSI number. And so if you like, say you got a $50,000 bonus in February or whatever, you make $160,000 a year. Whenever you get to that limit, that Social Security number, they stop withdrawing it. And so it goes into your check instead of what do they call it? Deduction.
There's gonna be, like, there's a breakdown in your case study.
Is it if someone, you're talking about if someone's working and young or if someone?
No. So if your salary, say your salary is $160,000 a year, right? So if that's your salary, however, if it's bonus or whatever, so once your income reaches that 147,000 and you're in the same job, that Social Security becomes 0 because you've maxed it out for the year. So that's probably a way to say it. So the max you'll pay, I think, is $26,500 a year of Social Security. So once you've paid that, they don't take it out your check anymore. Mm-hmm. And it now goes into your net check instead of your gross.
Good.
It's very good. Just finish. Put it to work.
Okay.
Put it to work. Put it to work. Seek a professional. I say that in all spaces. I am not one, but I rely on them and optimize as needed. Protect. Get your insurance outside of work. Young folks, get your insurance policy now while you're young.
Yeah.
And you don't have bad hits and ankles like me. Balance your portfolio, long-term care. Anybody with 50, make sure you have your long-term care. Talk to your family about your plans. This one pains me because my grandmother, who didn't have a lot, but she had some assets, and I planned it for her. I got her all set up. I had the trust and everything, and there was still drama. I'm like, golly, I think there's some belief that when people die, there's $1 million sitting around for everybody, and whoever claims it gets $1 million, and that's not true. But talk to your family about your plans, and get them on board. Like we've talked to our kids about it, like who's going to be when they were younger, who would be your guardian if something was to happen to us. Make sure you trust the guardian. The guardian of your kids may be different than the fiduciary person for your money. It was for us. We put a whole spreadsheet together, like, okay, about them, what about them, what about grandma, we like went through the whole spreadsheet and said, okay, this is the money person, this is the guardianship person. It was just, we had to come up, and then estate plan, don't put it off. And actually, that brings me to, so this, again, the path for the future. I'm gonna open it up for questions. If there's some that come in on the chat, I can talk for 3 hours, but I won't. So went through it sort of fast. I can go back through any slides, but what's coming up for you guys as you're hearing this and you're hearing my seasons and sort of how you saw the tears come and go, but how I evolved through it. What are your thoughts? What's coming up? What questions do you have?
We have a question on the
Okay.
call from Tina.
Okay.
Tina's asking, I'm curious what type of financial resources or people did Keisha use or learn from along her financial journey? How did she gain all that knowledge?
Great question. So the first, as I mentioned, when I was in college and I had the extra 13,000, I didn't know what to do with it. And just by luck, a friend of a friend introduced me to a financial planner. His name is Wesley Watkins. He still does things now. He's in DC. And she was like, he likes working with college students who want to learn. So I gave Wesley a call and he talked. I'm like, okay, he's a smooth talker. Okay. And I had a book beside me and I can't remember what that book was, but I was reading about investments, how to invest and what is P to E ratio. I was reading all this investor stuff. And so I would take our conversations, I would take what I read and I'd ask him a question. Then I'd take what I read and I'd ask him a question. We probably talked for like 5 months. And he never pressured me. It was always just this learning, teaching kind of conversation. And then eventually I'm like, okay, Wesley, I'm going to send you $6,000. Don't do this now, but I'm going to send you $6,000 to set up these accounts. And he did. He was a very trustworthy person to set up these accounts for me. And he said, I'm going to set up these accounts and I'm going to give you some to play with. At the time, you had to pay to trade. And so he set a New York Life account and I played a little bit. I bought some Johnson & Johnson. I bought I bought, what was the Anheuser-Busch before they sold it. So I bought some things there to play with it. And that was so that was the person that I talked to. And then I started reading, honestly, The Motley Fool. And this was 20-some years ago. I started reading The Motley Fool and I was like, oh, yeah, that is foolish. I don't want to be foolish. And so I would read that and I started investing in dividend reinvestment programs because they were free, most of them. And so I had those 3 stocks, Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble. They were all drips. And so I set my money up to go every month. And I did this even after I graduated from college. And so I didn't go learn a whole lot. I didn't go get a degree or a certificate. It really came from just being practiced in it. It's common sense. Like there's this perspective that investing is so difficult. You can never do it on your own. And I will always say, get a professional's advice. But you can also and should also understand and learn on your own. So that's what I do in my business. So in my business as the wealth coach, I want people to understand their money, understand their opportunities, understand their choices, what choices have gotten them where they were, where do they want to be. So we have all this head stuff before they go to the professionals who just want to look at spreadsheets. So we have these discussions. I'm like, I want you to feel empowered about your money before talking to a financial advisor instead of saying, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to go to a financial advisor to tell me what to do. A financial advisor is going to give you directions, but you still own it yourself. And so I worked with Wesley for those years, but probably by the time I was in season 2, I had done all my own direct investing. And I tell anybody now, get your ETF, set them on auto pay, be done. Like just make it simple, keep it simple. You'll have to get in when you get big money, you may want to get a little, creative, but just start. It truly is just start. And that'll get you comfortable. I remember people saying, oh, with the market, this and that. I said, look, I've been through 2000. I've been through 2008 when I owned a freaking house. I'm like, I've been through 2020. And it's like, when you see the up and down, and that's why I say to track it, when you see the up and down, it becomes less scary because you see the down and then you see the up. And then when I see the down, it's a sell. And then I see the up. And so that's the answer to your question is that I learned by doing, by practicing. And I didn't go all in and put a whole bunch of money in one place. I just did it little by little. I did $100 a month, $200 a month, contributed to the 401k, make sure I was at least getting my company's match in the 401k, at least. And then I moved forward from there. So it was an iterative process that just started by me taking one action. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
I was interested in something you said in the beginning when you said it like an issue at one of your companies because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. I understand that's me. I'm wondering if I'm also new to corporate.
Yeah.
How do you do it well?
Practice, like everything I'm gonna say is a practice. So what I learned, I learned by getting punched in the chin a little, and so there are 2 things that I learned. And now that I fast forward, 10, 20 years past some of those experiences, the thing I can say is I can be me and be authentic. and appreciate the environment that I'm in. So I can't be all me all day. I gotta sometimes tone it down, but you're gonna get Keisha's personality and what I do now, and I'm not suggesting this, but I've gotten to the point from a leverage standpoint that when I'm in conversations about jobs or whatever, even when I was talking with this CEO that I'm working with now, I was all me in the conversation. I was like, look, I ain't gotta do it. I walk the beach every day. And he's like, so what would it take? I said, okay, you asked. I said, it would take the right income. I said, for one. I said, but it would take truly being a team that gets along. I said, it's an environment that lets me be me. And I said, and you're seeing me in this conversation. I said, so it's an environment that lets me be me. I'm not going to filter, change, and button up when I get in your room. Like, this is who I am. And I said, and the other thing is I need there to be real camaraderie. Not some during football season when y'all wear t-shirts, but like real, genuine, y'all care about each other. And so, but I also had to go through the muck to get there. And I would not have appreciated the wonderful environment that I'm engaging in now, because I don't call it a job, the engagement I'm doing now. I would not have appreciated that if I hadn't been in some that hit me in the chin. And so you will always be able to be yourself, and you have to recognize the environment you're in. And there are times you have to go through the muck to get to a place where you have the freedom. And I've been through some muck, and at the time I wasn't happy about it. Now I truly do appreciate it. It's taught me how to be a good manager. It's taught me how to be a good partner. It's taught me how to be a good mom. It's taught me how to be a good friend. And so without those challenges, I probably wouldn't have that same appreciation. So hang in there.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued by you talking about like this role of your career as part of the financial plan. Did you make any specific investments like time, money, working with coaches, anything like that in your career, or were you a self-learner?
So here's the thing, and I think some of it is my personality. I have this magnet of people that come into my life, and once you step into my space, I'm gonna hold you. And so I had the blessing of having mentors, like I said, forever. So I had mentors in elementary school, middle school, high school, and because I had that mentorship, even when I didn't know what it was, when I got into the corporate environment, I looked for it again. And it would be things that when people were presenting or there was something that I was like, I like them, I would just go get in their space. And so, so from a career standpoint, I made two things. And I will say that I'm an only child, so me needing to have people in my space is a desire because I'm an only kid who likes to run her mouth. So that's part of it. But the other thing is once I got enough knowledge of how corporate worked, I realized the one thing that people tell you of put your head down and work hard is the worst advice you can give somebody. It is truly about building relationships and knowing people. So I'll give another example. So I was in a meeting in Nashville, and this leader who was like known, the movie Lion King, when Mufasa comes around, all the hyenas start shaking. Well, this guy was known to be a Mufasa. So when he came in the room, people like shuddered. And so we were in Nashville, and he gave a presentation. And I'm like, I'm gonna meet this dude because I've heard about him from all these years. He don't look that scary to me. I'm gonna go meet him. And so he was presenting, and I got up and I went back to the coffee spot. Because anybody who talks, he talks as much as I do, they're gonna need coffee or water after they're talking. So I strategically went by and I said, hey, I'm Keisha. I want to meet you. And he was like, oh, okay. And that was the start. Then maybe a few months later, I sent an email, hey, I'm going to be in Nashville again. You told me to reach out whenever I am. When can we meet? He's like, well, I usually get started around 6:45. I said, okay, I'll see you at 6:30. So I took that advantage, and that was the person who told the other person, don't mess this up. That was the person who led to me being able to name my salary for that job. And so that person right now, I can call up and say, when I was actually thinking about leaving, I called that person and said, hey, I saw that you did some things in your career because your son was having some challenges. Help me out. And he said, well, Keisha, the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out what you want your work life to look like, and then find a job to match it.
That's good.
And so, yes, I had people along my path the whole way. I have mentors from college. I have been blessed enough to have a number of people who have poured into me, which is why my goal is to do the same. And so, and the key part of that is I maintain those relationships. So all those folks, I know their birthdays. That might be the only text they get from me. They'll get a Father's Day text, a Mother's Day text, and a happy birthday text. And that's how I keep relationships going. So I'll give you another example. So when I worked here, my first boss here, I remember interviewing with her, and she was like, yeah, well, you sound all right, but we got 2 more people to talk to. I'm like, oh, and this is the phone thing, right? It wasn't Zoom. I'm like, okay. So I get the job, and then the admin told me, you know, after you finish that interview, she was so excited to hire you. I was like, dang, what she told me. So I built a relationship with her, and I remember I was going through this hair thing, and I used to get it relaxed, and it was straight. And I came in one day, and she's like, Keisha, come here. I said, what? She said, I saw this movie. I said, okay. She said, so she said, tell me about your hair. I'm like, no, Frank. I was like, I don't want to know about my hair. So we had the conversation, and we're talking, and like fast forward, like 6-8 months later, she gets a promotion, and we're in our corporate headquarters building, and we're sitting there, and she was like, so Keisha, your hair, she's like, mine's so thin. And then the VP of HR comes up, and she's Asian, and she's like, well, my strands are literally thick, so it doesn't curl, and doesn't. And we're sitting there having this conversation. We're not touching each other's hair, so don't do that. But we're having this conversation, and it was like, we are having diversity in action. So that was literally probably in like 2013, 2014. 2 weeks ago, I'm in Croatia. I'm trying to get to Croatia, and British Airlines messed up my flight, and I get to London at like 8 p.m. And the next, no, 8, I get to London at like 9 a.m. and the next flight isn't until the next day at 9 a.m. Well, that same person now works in London, and I said, hey, British Airlines is screwed. I haven't seen this person in probably 8 years or so. British Airlines has screwed up my flight. I might need to come on your couch. And she's like, okay, that'll be fun. Tell me when. Relationships stay. So keep them close. And that's one of the things that I do. Like right now, if I wanted to go, like I'm thinking about this road, I'm like, who am I going to ask to write a check for this road? And I don't usually go to people to ask them for things, which is great. So those relationships, like they come up when you least expect it. And so I just keep people in my circle. I hold relationships. I cherish them. And so that's just what I do. Yeah.
So you mentioned being a wealth coach. Like I've kind of thought about, I really like teaching and mentoring and stuff. So I thought of doing that. I don't know when, but I was curious when you started and how you kind of got into it.
Oh, it's so funny. So the way I got into wealth coaching, one, you meet me on the street, I'm gonna talk to you about your money. Like that's just what I do. I don't know you, but I tell you, I'm like, where's your money? Don't judge it. Don't talk. I don't want to hear all the stories of why you got there. Just, do you know where you are and where you want to go? And so I have those conversations with young folks. I catch them on the street. They be like, oh, why did I run into this lady? And so this is how it happened, though. So one, I would have those conversations naturally. I tell people about because I started, one of the roles that I had was I planned budgeting and staffing. So I got to see salaries. And that opened my eyes up to what folks should be asking for and so forth. And so I would have people in a confidential way, like, you know, you ain't making enough, right? Like I would have those conversations. And this one day I remember this lady who we were friends, but we weren't like friends. And she said, Keisha, I need you to come talk to me about my money. And this during the pandemic. I'm like, what you mean? She's like, come to my house and talk to me about my money. And I'm like, okay. So I put together a little PowerPoint and time value of money and this and that. And I get to her house and she said, okay. She said, so I've heard you talk about money and I don't really understand it. I said, okay. So I have my slides. She's like, hold on. And she goes to her computer. She logs into her pay stub. She logs into her investment account. She logs into her equity account. I'm like, whoa, you just tripped in front of me. I didn't ask for that, right? That's literally what it was. And I'm like, but if again, we were close, but like we weren't, I didn't know where her house was or anything, right? And said, okay, if you're gonna trust me in that, I said, so this is what's going on. I said, okay, so first thing I showed her was her Social Security bonus. It was like October. The next thing I did was I said, I said, why aren't you maxing out your 401k? You can afford it. She's like, well, no, I can't. I said, yeah, I think you could. I said, look, consider this. Maybe bump it up a little bit. She's like, I don't even know what to invest in. I said, okay, I'm not telling you what to invest in, but here are the 401k options. And again, we worked for the same company, so I knew how to read it. I'm like, so here are the ones that are performing. Look at the 1 year, the 3 year, the 5 year. I said, the 1 year is gonna look funky because we're in a pandemic. I said, but look at these. And she said, okay. And I said, I really think you can bump this up. And I said, oh, by the way, you got a crap ton of money in one company because you get equity. That might not be the smartest thing, but you know. And so we went through it, and that was like, okay. And I could tell she was overwhelmed. So that taught me, okay, I was pouring too much in there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay. So then like a couple months later, she's like, okay, so I did this, I did this, I did this. I bumped up my 401k. I told my kids they're not gonna have Christmas this year because I'm gonna open up their accounts. I'm like, don't tell me your kids. That's not what we're doing. Don't tell your kids Keisha can't for Christmas. I said, but okay. And so she's like, so I did this and I got this financial planner and we started talking. I hadn't given me any money yet, but we started talking. And I said, okay. Fast forward 2 more years. And she's like, I got it. I'm gonna sell some of this stock now, but I'm scared. Can you walk me through it? I said, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but I can show you the steps. So we got on the Zoom, because at this point I moved. We got on the Zoom and we did that. Fast forward another year. So this is probably 3 years ago now. This is a non-paying client, but she built my business basically through this interaction. So fast forward, she's like, hey, I told Nadine to call you. I said, why? She said, because she feels stuck and she don't understand her money. And I told her, I understand my money now because I work for Keisha. And she said, so I told her to call you. I said, well, she better call me soon because my rates are going up. And so that's how it started. Is that I really realized that that was something that I did naturally. I was clear, like I looked at getting the financial planning and the 12, I'm like, I ain't doing it for 12 months. Like I've gotten all the degrees, certificates in my life. I'm not doing no more, done with school. And so I started looking, I'm like, but what I do is I help people understand their stuff, help them give options and think possibility, think broader. And so that's how my coaching business started. Is there was a need of people who made a lot of money and didn't know what to do with it. And so I just helped them understand it so then they could make their choices on how they want to build their life for freedom. So, and I cannot escape the young folks who can't afford to pay me. But I talk with them and then I was like, but their parents can. So one of my friends paid for her son to go through coaching with me. And he was so cute. He was like, my goal is to be able to pay my rent for 3 months. I said, okay. And he said, and I want to be able to take my girlfriend on a trip. I said, okay. And I remember the second meeting we had, he said, I'm so excited, Miss Keisha. I put all my stuff in the form and it's not as much as I wanted to be. My investment doesn't look as much as I want to be, but I got it all in there. And he said, I looked at it for the next month and I saw it grew a little bit. And he said, and I was able to buy something without credit. He said, I bought me a new pair of cleats and a charging brick from my phone. His parents are doctors, but that was his accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, that's what you do. So the young folks can't get rid of me either. I still work with them and tell them, take that engineering salary, don't buy a car, keep a roommate. I tell them all of that. So, yeah. Okay. Any more questions on the chat? Okay. Yes.
I have friends, some in my 30s, I have friends that don't really understand the importance of investing. What's your like quick, I like freak out. I'm like, what do you say to convince them?
I don't convince nobody nothing, you grown. But what I will say,
I'm not rich friends.
you do, but you look, great point. Great point. Like who you hang around with makes a difference, right?
That's true.
And so when I was in college, I remember like I didn't do a lot of fancy stuff. You know, I had a car because I wanted a reliable car. At least it's stupid, but I learned from it. And so I had friends going and doing all kind of stuff. And I remember this one friend came and asked me for some money, and I had it. But she had nails, she had a car done, she was going to the club plumb crazy on Friday. And I'm like, you're making choices that I'm not making, which is the reason why I have money in my pocket. So no. And I had another friend who was really struggling and she needed her tuition paid. And I wrote the check. I knew I would never get it back. We never even talked about it again. But I wrote the check for her to stay in school. And so that, because I knew it would come back to me in some kind of way. And so I say that to say is observe the folks you're around. Don't judge them. Folks are grown. You ain't gonna convince them of anything, but when you start showing them the freedom that you have, because you're managing your money in a way, they start paying attention and asking questions. And that's what I found. So some folks who are like, oh, well, Keisha, I can't die. I'm like, fine. And then all of a sudden, so I got this car and I want to sell my car back. This is the real call I got last week. I got this car and I don't need it. I said, what do you mean? I could be doing better with my money. I said, okay, you sound a little rash right now. I said, calm down, tell me where you're going. Well, this car, I don't really need because I have another car and I want to give it back because I could put this $1,100 somewhere else. I said, okay, where are you going to put it? I don't know. I said, well, come up with your plan and where you're going to put your $1,100 first. Because you send the car back, this $1,100 is swoop right into your normal spending and you're in no different position. And so those kind of calls come and I'm like, and you have a professional you can call. Like I got a text yesterday. I'm going into business with my cousin. We bought a property. We just got the bid. Should I pay cash or not? And I know what this person has in cash, way too much. But anyway, this person has in cash. And I said, one, do you need the money right now? Two, is there any business benefit that would give the money a tax write-off for doing it as a loan, time constraint, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, by the way, I know you have 2 financial planners, call them. And she said, thank you, but you helped me think through the questions. And so that just helped me realize that it's not always me telling you what to do. Sometimes it's just, well, how did you get that? Like, how did you pay for that trip in cash and not have to worry about a credit card? Or how are you able to loan me this $100 or whatever and not even think about it? So all that to say is, I always say this as a general thing, is I hang around folks who think as big as I do. That's my goal for my circle of friends. Aisha and I have been friends since I used to try to chase her down and she's running a 6-minute mile and I'm walking an 18-minute mile. And we've been friends since then and we stay connected. And in this space of money, we both have a passion of helping young folks get on the right track. And I won't say right track, get on their track.
Yeah.
So
I think also like you're planting seeds with them that they're not ready yet.
Yeah.
And but when they are ready, you're gonna be their person, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it's like they're lazy. Like I think they just don't understand.
get them in this group. The lady. Oh. They're not, well, so that's the whole thing. So there's 8 years of gap of where they brain gonna catch up with you anyway. So reality, they're on a different developmental scale. So catch them in 7 years and they'll know, listen, get you some older guy friends. I guess that's the answer. Oh man, I appreciate, yes ma'am.
Well, you're kind of talking about it already. That part about, when you said, written up there, who do you have to be to get there? I mean, you're going there, but I'm really interested in that.
Yeah.
Can you talk some more about that?
Yes, so this is part of, I mentioned Evoke Life. It's my friend's company. We both went to college together. She's an engineer. And I won't steal her story, but she had the book out there, so I'm not like sharing anything personal. Her book is called Being is the New Doing. It's the name of her book by Radia Rose. And in that, she had gotten to a similar point as me. She had gotten to the point of burnout. She had the corporate job, she had the title, she had this. And she realized that what she said, I was living on life support. I was getting massages, I was getting IV calcium, I was taking juices, I was going to therapy. She's like, I was doing all these things. I was literally on life support, staying the season that I was in. And she said, I had to let it go. And so for her, letting it go and getting probably a 4-year head start became a person I could call and talk to. And part of her, the way she does her well-being company is she truly sits and says, who do you need to be? So, and I've been trained in her facilitation, so I can say this without going off the rails too much. And so she goes through a process where you think about, what are your thoughts right now? What are your beliefs? Who is your default? So when I talk about your money story, who is your default as a person? And not to judge, but just observe. So my default is I'm a fixer and a lifesaver. I want to fix and save everybody, even if you don't ask me to. If I see an opportunity, I'm gonna tell you how you can fix it. And so, and my default is that, in that I like people to like me. That's my default. That's who I am. That's who I've been conditioned to be living here where we're living. And then we talk about the goals, and she'll say, so who do you have to be? What do you have to think? What kind of people do you need to be around? Who do you have to be that person and that design that you have? So she calls it a default and a design. And she takes people through a 12-week process to be able to go through connecting their goals with who they need to be there. And they set up what I call them oh shit action. They set up oh shit actions. They set up clear deliverables, and they go through that whole process. And so that language I got from being a part of her program of who do you need to be. So when we were talking, and I said, I got to figure out how to build this road. She said, who do you need to be to build this community?
Keisha,
So who do I need to be to build this road? Is I need to be my ancestors' wildest dreams.
Yeah, I love it.
So, and it really, like, all her things have people crying all day long. And so that's what it is, because you really get to who you are. And so one of the things I was having a conversation, and I'm trying to hold back my tears too. On Wednesday, I was driving to the airport, and randomly a friend called me. And I, like y'all, I have folks call me all the time, and we just had these conversations. And she said something about, she said something told me to call you. She said, because this week has just been so funky. And I'm like, whenever I need to think bigger, I call Keisha. So we were talking, and I said, well, the great thing is that you're feeling this pit in your stomach. I said, give yourself credit for feeling that, because it's showing you that you're out of alignment. Most of us operate on autopilot, that we don't even feel it. So when you feel it and you acknowledge it, that's a check mark. Like, I'll give you a gold star for that. That's step one. I said, and now that you acknowledge it and you feel it, then just sit with it. Like, don't do it, figure it out, and I got to get this right, and I got to have everything lined up before I'm like, just sit with that. What does it mean? What do you want to do differently? And so she was talking about this career change she just had recently, probably 6 months or so. And she's like, I know this isn't it. I said, okay, but what is it? She's like, what? I said, I know I use these mystical words. I said, but what is it? I said, what is this time in this position for? What is it for? I said, you're working for a small consulting company, and they're all coming to you. I said, and they can afford to pay all these young folks coming out of college 6 figures. I'll give you the company name. I said, they can pay all these folks coming out of college 6 figures. And I said, so what are they doing to be able to afford to do that? If you're the expert and you're the newest person in the company, obviously you're bringing some value. So maybe this season is for you to understand how these 2 folk built this consulting company and are able to afford to employ 20, 30 employees like you, because you know your stuff. I said, so maybe that's what this season is for you to observe and copy and paste that. And she said, I'm in tears. I said, why? She said, because I got that sticky written right on my desk. And I said, well, I see that. And you said, I said, there are times, I said, what I am clear on right now is that I'm in a space of whenever being able to take a break from my career, it has opened me up to be able to just create space.
Yes.
I said, so I didn't say it to you. It came through me. You already knew it. It just came through me to you. And so literally she's like, I'm tired. I'm like, I'm crying too, but I'm driving in Atlanta traffic. So I just not crying. And so those conversations just come up. And so to your point, if you have friends who can even just really listen to you and be in a space to be like, and even call you out. Like if you say, well, okay, you've been complaining about this job for 6 months, so what you gonna do differently? Sometimes that's the conversation. I was talking to a CEO the other week. We were in DC, and she was like, yeah, I ran into these venture capitalists, and they want me to do this and work with them in Dubai and this and that, but I ain't got time. I can't leave this and that. I said, that sounds all self-inflicted. I said, you the CEO. You got control of your time if nobody else does. She's like, well, you ain't gotta call. I said, I'm not calling you out. I'm just making an observation. You get to choose what you spend your time on. I said, you ain't gotta fly to Dubai to work with these people. Can you work it on Mondays from 8 to 10 o'clock? I said, they obviously want something that you can bring of value. You determine and choose how you want to engage with them. No decision has to be all in, and no choice that you have is permanent. Like most of these things I did, at the time, I thought they were the life sentence. I got to do this job. I got to do this career. I got to do this. And what I realized is that no, it was for a season. And that's easy looking back 20 years. Now you have the perspective to be able to say, oh, maybe this is a season. What am I going to get out of this season? How is it going to fuel my wealth in this season? How is it going to fuel my freedom? And there are times that I was conscious of that, but most of the time I wasn't. A lot of this was luck and grace, but I take it. So.
And going back to what you talked about, the season of having enough, right? That you looked at the numbers and then you looked at, it's not like you looked at where you were, and so it was more than just money, but that feeling of we have enough. This is one of the things I talk to people all the time, right? Like, and it's similar to your story. Like, I'm doing this thing, and I feel like this is not my path. I'm not in alignment. How do I stop doing this thing in order to do something else, right? How, maybe both from like a financial perspective, maybe starting from the financial numbers perspective, how did you get to a place where you knew that the numbers worked?
So one, I'm an engineer, so I do spreadsheets all day. I'm married to an engineer, so our house, like our vacations are on spreadsheets. Like that's what we do, right? Literally.
You look at the numbers.
Oh, absolutely. No,
It's intuition.
No, I look at numbers every month.
Yeah.
And I see them. And the reason I knew my five-figure net worth at this age and that is because I have it by year. So I knew in 2015 we hit this, in 2018 we hit this, in 2022 we hit this. And so the enough came from the calculator. So there was this calculator I found. It was actually a retirement calculator that's free to download, that you put in. There are 5 factors. So there's your current portfolio balance, your current annual contribution, so 401k, independent savings, independent investment, whatever. Your age that you want to cut that off, stop working, stop the income, and how long you need it to go. And then the return rate. So those are the 5 factors. And so I started playing with them. And my number, I remember a friend of mine told me, she called me like 7 years ago, the same one who wants to sell the car. She called me like 7 years ago. She's like, Keisha, you still gonna retire at 55? So what are you talking about? We hadn't talked in like 10 years. She's like, you still gonna retire at 55? I'm like, where did you get that from? She said, you said that when we were in college, which is why I wrote it down and put it on my vision board. I said, actually the number is 53, but sure, yes, I am. And so that was our number. The number was 53. My husband will be 60 when I'm 53. That was our number. And so I started working through the spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay, remember I said I got real aggressive. We're maxing out 401k, we're maxing out Roth. We got clear on the money we couldn't touch because of age and the money we could touch because it was ours and didn't have an age restriction, as you were talking about, the pre-tax money and the post-tax money, right? So we got clear on that and we plugged into the spreadsheet. And then I'm like, for my legacy, which we didn't talk about here much, my legacy is I want to leave my kids more. I want to leave my kids with a head start. I want my kids to be able to walk away when they're not in a healthy situation and not having to hear. But I'm not raising spoiled brats. Like that's clear too. Like you're gonna work, you're gonna get a job. And so I said, I want to leave my kids $2 million each or whatever, right? And so I plugged into the spreadsheet, I put their ages, I put my ages, and then we saw the math of if we keep investing at this rate for, again, at that point, it would have been 8 years, then we'll be here. Well, what if we just invest your part? What if mine goes away and we need to pull some of mine? What does that look like? And it's like, oh, it still lasts to 90. And I'm clear, I still have more to give to this world that I can get income from. So this isn't really a stop to income. It's just a stop for a season or pause for the season or a reduction in the season, whatever I want to call it. And that's the thing is I got to choose whatever I wanted to call it. It wasn't some box I had to sit in. I get to choose whatever I call it. Just like this retirement thing, well, you're not really retired because you're not sitting on the couch or at the beach. I'm like, no, I'm really retired because I ain't got to do shit. Like that's why I'm retired. Like that's my definition. And so, yeah, so through those seasons, kept track. And so I knew enough when we got to that worksheet, and it was like, if I don't have another dime of my name coming in, and you're working, but we got the insurance piece cared for. And I was making twice as much as my husband. So it was truly a significant impact on the income that's coming in. And I'm like, but we're good. And oh, by the way, we're gonna go build this road, or we're gonna go build a house, or we're gonna buy a car or whatever. And I put those outlays, and my kids in out-of-state tuition. I ain't getting no scholarship money because I'm mentoring. So I put all those in there and our numbers were still okay. So I just played with the spreadsheet and it was like, I'm good. So this same friend I told you that came to me 3 years ago, we were playing with her spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay. She's like, Keisha, I want to retire at 60. I said, okay. And I said, well, do this, put her numbers in. Her husband works for the VA, so they got tuition, they got life insurance for life. And so we went through it and I said, okay, I said, at this rate, you're gonna leave your kids $10 million if you lose. She's like, I ain't leaving my kids nothing. I said, okay, but this is what the numbers say. And she's like, well, I mean, like, I don't wanna leave them anything. I said, that's fine. I said, well, what if you don't retire at 60? What if you retire at 58? She plugged it in. I said, okay, so now you're gonna leave your kids $7 million. I said, I don't wanna leave them anything. I said, do me a favor. She said, what? I said, how old are you now? She's like, I'm 55. I said, plug in 55. And she did. And she said, what? I said, that number's still positive at like 110. I said, you're gonna be all right. She's like, what you mean? I said, that means you can retire now if you want to. I said, now it's your choice. I said, so I don't want to hear you complain. If you don't want to do that job anymore, now it's a choice. And she's like, oh. So she texted me like a couple months later. I almost walked out of there, girl, but the stock went down. And I walked right back in there. But it gave her that peace of mind of understanding where she is not this mystical thing. There's a spreadsheet that I can plug in numbers and just see what it looks like. And none of it's guaranteed. You're not guaranteed a 7% interest rate or any of that, but it at least gives you a gauge. And again, if you do it early enough, you can always go back in. You can take a break and go back in. So the ability for us to, like this here, I can't remember where it was. Anyway, the ability for us to realize that abundance and that money and that way of living is out there for us to choose it, like that's the biggest mindset shift. And there are realities of, I am 68 years old, Keisha, and I ain't working nobody's consulting job. Nobody wants to hear me speak. I got what I got. Okay, what are you doing with what you got? And I still would argue, you got some painting skills left in you. You got some teaching skills left in you. I'm reading this book now called Strength to Strength, and it's about going from the fluid intelligence curve to the crystallized intelligence curve. And I got this from that mentor that I have. And we,
I've got a lot of books on it.
look, and I haven't finished it. I've been carrying this book around for a month and a half. I didn't listen to 4 audiobooks in the last week and a half, but this book I'm still carrying a half. But the concept is that there's this fluid intelligence curve that everybody's on and you deteriorate. If you're a musician, if you're an athlete, if you're a teacher, if you're an accountant, whatever, it starts deteriorating around 40. And they were like, most people hang on to who they were, and they deteriorate and they're in denial and not claiming it. And he said, but there's this crystallized intelligence that actually increases with age because it's based on your life experience. It's based on your wisdom. It's based on the context that you get from being on this earth for more years than the young folks. And it's like, if you shift to that crystallized intelligence, then you realize where you can leverage on your life pleasure, I guess, of how you make an impact. And in my perspective, legacy becomes all brand new because it's not about you figuring it out and having the ideas. It's already in you. Now you're just leveraging what's already in you.
Is that by Arthur Brooks?
It's a green book.
Yeah.
Might want to get the audiobook because I'm telling you, I've tried to read this book and I've carried it to 3 countries now and I still haven't finished it. It's a great book, but that's the basic concept, is being able to accept that this curve of you being the CEO and the title and all that eventually is going to deteriorate. And honestly, reading that book gave me grace to my most recent boss who made my life a living hell, where I saw my life expectancy because he had been in his role 17 years and was holding on to who he used to be. And his way of holding on was making everybody else suffer. And so that gave me a new appreciation. I'm like, you're still an asshole, but I get it now. Like, I get where you were coming from. And like, so one of the things I do, because I'm petty, is every June, the anniversary when I left, I send a thank you card. Because he said sometimes, you don't never thank nobody for nothing. Really, I ain't thanking you for treating me like this. So every June I send a thank you card. Well, this June, I'm sending a thank you card in this book because he needs to read it. My therapist said I could be petty. And so this is the way I'm being petty. But yes, and if he won't listen to the recording, somebody at the company won't listen. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know who asked the question, but I'll talk forever. I promise you, I will. I will. Anything else coming up? You want to raise your hand? Go ahead. You don't have to hesitate. I see you sitting here doing this.
Oh, well, I was just thinking, okay, so, the first stage I'm in, I think, and it's like kind of putting up with shit energy. Do you think that's necessary? Like, when do you think putting up with the shit is enough?
So I'm gonna talk to you like you're my daughter, right? And that is that you have to go through stuff to appreciate things later. And I'm not saying being in an environment that literally is beating you down, but there are things that you won't appreciate unless you go through it. And again, I'm not saying anybody be in a toxic situation and stay, but I would say take a step back and say, what can I learn from this? I didn't start directly managing people until probably 17 years into my career. And I got a team of 5 and they were like, okay, now you manage us. And so they were like, you're such a good manager. How did you learn this? I said, I learned what not to do.
Yeah.
I learned not to treat people like crap. And so I'm like, so I may not know all the HR stuff, but I know how to make you feel appreciated. I know how to have a conversation with you. And so part of my journey was going through those situations of people who are just nasty folks. And then said, okay, Keisha, that's not who you want to be. That's not how you want to be treated. So I won't say there's a point in time, but if you're open to getting what you're designed to get from this season, it'll open you up for the next one. Because what I used to say is, God will keep putting me through this until I learn it. God will keep putting me until I learn it. And it's like, no, Keisha, what happens is you go through situations that look familiar, but you built your tool set to get through them. And so now this third time, it still looks like the same funk, but God's not being mean to you. You have the tool set to get through it now that you didn't have the same time you went through it the first time. People are gonna people, y'all. Companies are gonna company, the society's gonna society. Like none of that's in our control, but we can control how we interact with it, how we approach it. If we have our money right, how long we have to stay in it or take a break from it. And so there are things that are gonna be always what society and conditioning is. And then there are things that we can choose to do. And part of my thing is if you have your money right, you have a whole lot more space to make those choices to do what you want to do. But you're gonna have to go through some stuff. It's just like I tell my 19-year-old that too. I'm like, get over it. You had a good life right now. If you gotta deal with a sucky roommate, okay, deal with a sucky roommate. Not that difficult. So. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation, y'all. It's not your typical, here's a PE curve and this is your inflection point to
That's
5.
what we're doing in January. Stop working in January.
But sometimes you need this kind of stuff just to really get you grounded and thinking about why am I doing all this anyway? Like, what is it for?
Yeah, it's actually the most important piece. I mean, I think people come into our office all the time. They're like, I know you're not a therapist. I'm like, I'm not, but like 80% of money is behavior and emotions and your money stories, at least 80%, right? Because it goes back to like, what are we here for? What are we trying to do? Like what, and those are the scary questions. It's, if you're
everybody get a therapist. Like don't go to your professional, other professionals making them be your therapist. Go get one. I've appreciated mine. I was the other day, I was talking to my CEO and I said, yeah, my therapist said, I'm like, oh, I said that out loud. Yes, my therapist said. So this is the way you can get in touch with me. Going into the holiday season, I mentioned having some experiences with my family, and I'm big on generational wealth, and I got a couple knocks in the chin and dealing with my own family and assets and probate and all that kind of stuff. And I did all the right things. I did the protection, I did the trust, I did the asset reduction process to get Medicaid, like truly went through all those very difficult situations, and there was still drama. And so from that, I'm really big on having these conversations early on, knowing where the long lost uncle might be, because if there's only a will, or if there's not a will, your state's gonna determine how your stuff is spread out. And Uncle Jim that you hadn't seen in 20 years is still entitled, even if he's not been in grandma's life for forever. So the conversation, or one of the next workshops I'm gonna do is legacy protection for you and your loved ones going into Thanksgiving, because that is never a one-time conversation. So why not start it when you're in front of your family? And so I'm gonna go through this, I'm gonna have some talking points that people can use, free workshop that I'm gonna do. And it literally came to me while I was here. People were like, yeah, I need to do that. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. You can book me to speak. I'll do companies, workshops, podcasts, whatever, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm gonna probably do another wealth cohort in January, where I do 10 weeks. So we walk through this and truly get your 10 major things in order, your inventory, your assets, understanding your investment plan, knowing how to read your investment statements. And again, so you can be empowered to talk to those professionals, your attorney, your accountant, your financial planner, your estate attorney, your spouse, talking to those folks. So that's how you can engage with me. I have enjoyed this afternoon, and look forward to staying connected with you all.